Straina Butcher here with our host, Dr. Sarah Hensley. Hey, Dr. Hensley.
Hey, what's going on?
Not a lot.
I'm Dr. Sarah Hensley. For those of you who don't know, I've been studying the science of attachment and attraction for over 15 years. I'm a specialized social psychologist who is here to answer all your burning relationship questions.
Yeah. So that actually brings up the topic that we want to discuss today. And just, from working together, I know that this is something that you see a lot in your practice. And that burning question is, should I stay or should I go?
For sure.
So for all your followers out there, let's discuss this. What are your biggest points in terms of, if you decide to stay or if you decide to go?
Right. That's a really tough one. Obviously, there's a lot to consider, and each relationship is very unique. But generally, what I see is somebody comes into my practice and they're like stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
The rock is their spouse
Mm-hmm.
who is not behaving in the way that is, they want to behave. And there's lots of problems in the relationship. They've tried to fix the problems. They're not getting anywhere. And they're like beating their head against the wall, trying to get some movement in a positive direction, and they can't get anywhere. And then the hard place is divorce land, right? Which is scary, obviously. And they don't know what's on the other side of divorce land. And
they just know
they know it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? And a lot of, obviously, these couples have kids, they have finances, they're attached, they built lives together. It is not an easy decision. I've been there. It's not an easy decision. But there are some factors to consider, for sure. My two non-negotiables, like if this is happening in your marriage, you need to get the heck out of there, is abuse, physical, verbal, mental, emotional, sexual, financial. I don't care. If it's abuse, you lose. You go. You have to go because it generally does not get better, ever.
And with your experience, personal and within your practice, I mean, what does that sometimes look like? Because sometimes people, I think, have a hard time actually seeing the fact that it is abuse, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that it is abuse, especially when it comes to emotional abuse. Because physical, of course, is out there.
Absolutely.
But emotional and financial abuse, give us some examples of what that looks like.
Yeah. So emotional abuse can be somebody who has extreme defensiveness. So you come to them with a need that you have or something that's not going well in the relationship, and you just want to have a civilized, respectful conversation about it. And they get extremely defensive. They may do what's called DARVO, a defend, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So they blame shift it back onto you, saying you're the problem without taking any accountability for what you brought up as the issue inside of the relationship. They may do character attacks. They may get very verbally aggressive and yell and curse or, slam doors. There may be physical aggression, obviously, as a result of that. So emotional and verbal abuse usually are tied very closely together. Emotional abuse often centers around control and manipulation, whether it's control of the conversation and manipulation of the conversation or control of larger situations within the relationship.
So psychologically speaking, why do you think that people still choose to stay even when these circumstances are at hand?
Oh gosh, they're trauma bonded.
Yeah.
They're 100% trauma bonded because trauma bonding has a very predictable cycle, which is, there's the sort of love bombing phase or the phase where you get pulled in. Then there's devaluation where there's all sorts of abuse. And then there's usually a discard phase. And that doesn't always look like that the partner is walking away from the relationship. It could be a discard is something like getting locked out of your bedroom. I had a client yesterday just tell me that her husband locks her out of the bedroom all the time when he's mad at her. That's a discard. That's saying, I don't want anything to do with you right now. And it's a very manipulative, unhealthy, abusive behavior. And there's a cycle to that. And that cycle always has intermittent reinforcement where sometimes you get your needs met, which is usually during the love bombing phase. And then other times those needs are pulled away or there's even abuse involved. And so it's that up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down cycle. And your brain chemistry gets addicted to pumping out stress hormones and then pumping out love hormones like oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine when they come back and they love bomb you.
Mm-hmm.
And so just when you get the strength to leave and you start to do that, they hoover you back in. There's actually a term called hoovering,
Mm-hmm.
where they suck you back in like a Hoover vacuum cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to leave. And I
Yeah.
know somebody who's never been in it is like, how could it be hard to leave? But the brain becomes addicted, just like a drug. I mean, it's like being addicted to heroin. You can become addicted to a person.
Sure.
And so then when you try to break the trauma bond, because the only thing that breaks it is no contact, or at least very limited contact if you have kids. You have a stage of empowerment where you feel really good about it, and then you go through the withdrawal, and people never see the withdrawal coming. And then it can be this extreme missing of the person, and sadness and depression and anxiety, because your brain is addicted,
Right.
and it's withdrawing. It's a chemical reaction.
And we've both personally experienced this.
Yes.
And I can speak from my personal experience that the only way
That's it.
that I was able to get away was no contact.
Yep, for sure.
And we shared a child.
Yeah, for sure.
And we still couldn't. It was the only way.
Yeah.
And I think that
Same.
it's difficult, of course, for people who have children to be able to do that. And we had to navigate it in a way where we learned how to parallel parent instead of co-parenting.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And it's somewhat worked.
He still hates you.
Yes, it's true. He does.
He does. It's
And
very obvious.
And yours probably would too if he was still alive.
Yeah, he's not here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it was rough. We had to parallel parent. We had a no contact order. Gosh. But it's crazy. Let's go back to the trauma bond. I divorced the man legally. This was in my very unhealed years. Okay, so yeah, I've come a long way. Very, very unhealed years. I divorced the man legally, and then I went back to him.
I remember.
So that's how strong the trauma bond is. And the thing of it is it always gets worse when you go back.
Yeah.
Every single time you go back, it gets worse.
And that's where the brain gets really tricky, because I know for me, and we've talked about this before, it was always like, well, if we can just get through this, then it'll be better.
Yeah.
It'll be better.
Right.
And if we just get through this next crisis, it'll be better.
Right. Which is total and complete toxic hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So toxic.
Which was another thing, that comes into play that we wanted to talk about. That's this huge indicator of feeling like, well, I can stay if things will change. And, if I just do this, then, it's going to get better.
Yeah. If I do a special dance and twist myself into the right type of pretzel,
right,
then my partner will be better and we'll all be fine.
Yeah.
And you're right. It is like, well, let's just get through the next crisis, right? This fight that we had, or this betrayal, or this, bad behavior that's happening frequently. Let's just correct that and then we'll all be good. No, these are pathologies that are deep. These are either deeply rooted attachment insecurities, or you have layers of things like narcissism, borderline personality disorder, or other mental health pathologies, maybe even addictions, rolled into the mix. And you gotta let that stuff go. You've got to get out of there. It's never going to get better. Your nervous system is being completely wrecked in the process. So those are extreme cases, right?
Right.
My other no-go is infidelity. And I'm in a local moms group, and somebody posted anonymously yesterday, like, I've been married for 15 years to my best friend. Never in a million years would have thought he would have cheated on me. I came back from a work trip. He admitted while I was gone, he slept with his coworker.
Wow.
I don't know what to do. And I just put on there, hey, send me a private message. I'm a relationship coach. I'll be happy to just, weigh in and give you my 2 cents about the situation, because I know you're very, very hurt right now and very, very confused. And so I chatted with her for a little bit. And, turns out things haven't been, so great. He's for sure an FA based on which is fearful avoidance. And if you guys don't understand attachment, definitely hit my social media on that.
Yeah.
And he's sabotaging. Oh my gosh, he's sabotaging.
In what way? I mean, is he asking her to stay, or is he gaslighting her?
He's now at, I don't know what I want.
Okay.
Right. So,
which adds to her rejection.
Right, exactly. And so now she's in total anxious attachment mode, right? I don't know what her attachment style is. I didn't assess it, but her behavior right now is very anxious. which, that would bring out anxious attachment in anyone,
Yeah.
for sure.
And
And so she's
especially
sort
with
of,
the rejection on top of the rejection, because the
yeah,
betrayal itself is rejection
it is.
enough. And then when you turn around and be like, well, I don't really know what I want, then
Right.
that's
I've not been happy for a long time,
right.
which kind of took her somewhat by surprise. She didn't think it was as bad as he was thinking it was. But here's the thing. Infidelity is so deeply rooted in attachment, and it is a repetitive behavior. I am sorry. I am totally pro Rachel Green, once a cheater, always a cheater.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, the whole lesson that our mom taught us our whole lives.
Once
a cheater, always a cheater.
And
There's some psychological
yeah.
science behind that.
Unfortunately, we did not learn that lesson very easily.
No, we did not.
Without lots of personal experience.
Yeah, that's true.
But I want somebody else to learn it. Let me tell you. Let me be the one to tell you, once a cheater, always a cheater. I am sorry.
And what is the psychological science behind it?
Oh, for sure. Well, it's rooted in attachment. So there's reasons that the different attachment styles cheat. So the anxious preoccupied will cheat if their needs for love, affection, attention aren't being met in the relationship, because to be alone is to be abandoned, to be neglected is to be abandoned, and that abandonment wound is so painful, they'll band-aid it with attention from someone else. The fearful avoidance sometimes cheats out of spite because they feel like they've been hurt or betrayed inside of the relationship, and they carry that big betrayal wound. So it's like, well, if you don't care about me, well, I don't care about you either, so I'm going to go cheat.
I can relate to that one a
Yeah,
little.
yeah, absolutely. And the dismissive avoidant, of course, always cheats to simply put a block in between the intimacy between them and current partner, because their subconscious wounds around intimacy and being close are so high. And new partner, there's no wounding and fears around intimacy with that partner yet, because there's not been any longevity to create them yet.
Right.
So they oftentimes haven't been vulnerable or emotionally intimate with current partner for years and years. All of a sudden, new partner comes along. It's the honeymoon phase. All their subconscious fears around intimacy aren't attached to that new partner, so then they can open up and be vulnerable. I mean, I have had couples come in and the DA say, I was able to tell this new person I just met all of these really deep things that I've never shared with my wife. And I'm like, do you understand? It's because your fears around intimacy are attached to your wife and the longevity of that relationship. And so you think, oh, it's the person that I'm just able to open up to this new person because it's that person is different.
Right.
No, it's just that there's not been longevity yet, right? And as longevity occurs, those wounds will surface, and you'll repeat the pattern,
sure.
right? And I saw a DA in my practice the other day. He's on his second marriage, which was a product of an affair from his first marriage. Both of them were cheating on their spouses and got together, and then left their spouses and got remarried. And this guy just repeated his DA patterns. He was cheating on second wife. And it was just like, yeah.
Well, and it just goes to show for the partner that's cheated on that it really doesn't have anything to do with you.
No.
Yeah.
Lord, no.
But sometimes you feel that way, right?
Sure.
Like that's part of the betrayal. That's part of the rejection. It's like, what have I done?
Of course.
And out of your practice and out of all the attachment styles, which is the one that cheats most frequently?
The DA.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because they just can't be intimate. But they're human, and so they have a need for intimacy, but it scares them to death. And so they just want to bounce from new partner to new partner where it's the honeymoon phase, because they're scared to death of conflict, commitment, meeting people's expectations. So the honeymoon phase is literally perfect for them.
Right.
So they just want to keep, and they have this unfortunate, very, what am I trying to say here? Their expectations of how a relationship should go are just not really accurate, right? It's like, it's just not really what happens in a relationship. The honeymoon stage just doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can't expect it to, but they have this just crazy dream that this honeymoon phase is going to last forever. And then when it stops, because there's you get to know each other better, and people's best foot forward stops getting put first, as happens when you get to know somebody deeply and you're not in that honeymoon exciting phase anymore.
And you're dealing with variables that are real life.
Exactly. Yeah. And conflict starts to creep in, and expectations, get a little bit higher for their time, energy, and attention. That stuff really turns them off and pushes them away. And when I work with my dismissive avoidant clients, DA stands for dismissive avoidant, if we didn't put that in there. I really have to help them understand that this isn't a true compatibility issue. This is a childhood trauma issue. where you were emotionally neglected in childhood and you don't know how to process your own feelings or deal with the feelings of others. You were pushed into hyper independence too soon. And so you value your independence over commitment, and you're scared to death of vulnerability and conflict. So basically, you are scared of all of the things it takes to make a relationship work.
Right.
Commitment, conflict resolution, closeness, and intimacy. They're scared to death.
And the 3 really go hand in hand.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, it's just part of a relationship.
Yeah.
And they have this program that's just like, no, it should always be the honeymoon phase.
Yeah,
and nobody should ask anything of me. We should just always have peace and harmony.
This is how I am. If you don't like me the way I am, then you can leave.
If you don't love me the way I am, leave. You know what? That's the mentality of a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Right? If you really think that you're so perfect, that you're just above learning how to love someone else in a unique way because they're a unique person, then, I mean, you've got serious wounding.
Yeah, for sure.
And you need to work on that.
And I did coach for a little while,
Yes,
within your practice.
And you were a fabulous one.
Thank you. It's tough. It's a tough gig. And, the expectation of helping people with their most intimate relationships it was tough on me. Yeah. But needless to say, I can say through my own experience in coaching that the DAs were the most complex. They're not the most complex of the attachment styles, but to coach them,
for sure,
it was extremely difficult because they can't process, right? So even while you're talking to them, they would listen.
Yeah.
But was it registering?
No, it's like you're speaking a foreign language to them sometimes. Yeah. That's why I think they do so well in my groups. Because in the groups, this is why I built the groups. Because in the small group setting, they can just sit back and listen.
Right.
Right, which is so much better. Their nervous systems are so much more regulated when they can sit back and listen versus having to speak and interact. And then they can take the bite-sized pieces of information and then they can go sit with it and process it because they're extremely slow emotional processors. And when you put a dismissive avoidant with a fearful avoidant and you have that conflict cycle, the fearful avoidant, they process emotions like speed of light.
Deep fillers.
And then when the DA's sitting there going, I don't know how I feel, I don't know what to say, they're like, you don't even care. Right. And I'm like, no, it's a capacity issue. Like they literally are frozen. They can't process their emotions, which I think would circle back to another very common situation related to should I say or should I go, which is the profound neglect that dismissive avoidance bring to relationships.
Yeah.
And
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Specifically with that dynamic, I know that the short period of time that I coached, it seemed as if that FA, when it was the FA-DA dynamic, the FA was so torn on because they're like, I can't deal, like some of these people had been in like 20 plus years of marriage.
Of course.
Where they were getting nothing from their partner.
Literally, they could be like, oh, the sky looks so pretty today, and look over to their partner, and the partner would just be looking away like off in space.
Yeah.
Like no bids for connection are accepted. If there's conflict at all, the DA will just ghost them for days, like not talk to them because they're shut down into their freeze response. The DA becomes a complete workaholic or hobbyaholic. They literally will oogle over their dog, but not their partner.
Yeah.
I've had so many clients say they love the dog more than me.
And that's so sad. So, I mean,
so sad.
So in your practice, when you see that dynamic and, these people have been, let's just say they've even been married a decade, right? Like when is the point of saying no more? I can't, like, I've got to walk away, because understanding and showing compassion towards your partner and the fact that they do have this capacity issue is one thing, but at what point do you just like, what's the timeline?
Yeah. So I sort of have a phase of interventions, right? So intervention number 1 is having the non-DA partner show up extremely attachment secure. So we really shore up their attachment security. So making sure they understand non-critical communication, how to ask for needs to be met with the dismissive avoidant, in ways that give them a sense of volition or autonomy or control. Really trying to create peace and harmony, picking your battles with the DA, and using very strict rules around conflict resolution with the DA. So that's always first, right? Because sometimes if the insecure DA is like mild to moderately dismissive avoidant, that secure behavior of the other partner will really model to them good behavior, as well as ease their nervous systems and allow them to step in a little bit more and come closer. So that's what we try first.
Right.
If that doesn't work, if the partner that is not DA has really stepped into security and they're asking for their needs to be met in a non-critical way, and they're picking their battles and they're giving their DA some space, and they're, learning to meet some of their own needs on their own, and there's still no intimacy, then it's like we need a boundary around getting help. That's phase 2, right? So if you're not willing to get some help, if you're not willing to participate in getting help, then I gotta go.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to change without help.
Right.
They're not going to change.
Right.
And understanding their patterns alone even doesn't change them. They have to get the tools. They have to build their capacity for intimacy. And then, phase number 3 is like, if they do get help and they're not really participating, which I see that a lot, they're just not participating. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll go. And
it's like obligation.
Yeah. It's just they're being drug, right? To therapy or to coaching or whatever it is. And they're not participating, then it's like you have to call it. Because there are people that are trying to save their marriage, and there are people that are just trying to avoid divorce. And a lot of times the dismissive avoidant is just trying to avoid divorce. Yeah. They don't want to get divorced, but because they're like, my marriage is fine. Because they have like no needs for intimacy after a while. So if there's no intimacy, they're just like, it's fine. I mean, I wouldn't say they don't have any needs, but a lot of them, over time,
I've seen it.
They don't need very much. They have like a thimble-sized needs bucket, right? Yeah. So as long as there's not conflict in the relationship, they're fine.
Yep.
Conflict is really the only thing that makes them not want to be in the relationship.
They fascinate me.
Oh, the
dismissive avoidant fascinates me. And I think it's because I'm so on the other side of the spectrum that I'm just like,
remember when I dated one for a year and a half?
Yes.
And I was like, and I knew he was a dismissive avoidant, and I was still beating my head against the wall in my unhealed days.
Yes.
Again.
And you were calling me like, what should I do? And I'm like, leave.
I know. That was like, it was always leave. And I was like, but I don't want to leave. Because, I was a raging FA with attachment anxiety who had intermittent reinforcement in the relationship with this person. But I mean, I look back now compared to my marriage.
Night and day.
Barely a relationship.
Yeah.
It was barely a friendship.
Yeah.
It was pathetic.
Yeah, the breadcrumbs were real in that one.
Oh gosh! And every time
and
I
he's
would
a
leave,
great guy. He's
he's
a wonderful
so nice.
guy. Yeah.
I mean, he was a good-hearted person.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and bash him because I do think that he was a moral person. I think he was a good-hearted person.
Most of them are.
He was really funny, but unfortunately, he just sucked.
Well, he was
as
a DA
boyfriend.
through and
He was
through.
a total DA.
Because DAs will also use comic relief as a defense mechanism.
For sure. Anytime I tried to attempt a serious conversation, he would just make a joke.
Yeah.
He could not do it. He could not do it. And he literally broke up with me the night and he was with me, that I got the call from the emergency room that my mom had a tumor on her pancreas, that she had pancreatic cancer.
Yikes.
And then it was like, you just need to focus on your mom. Like, I just really can't give you what you need. You're just going to need to really go focus on her. And here I am, like, my mom's my best friend. I just had this horrible divorce where I literally have no contact with my ex. We have a domestic violence no contact order that I'm navigating. My mom has pancreatic cancer.
You just put your dog to sleep.
I just put my dog to sleep. All of my attachments were just gone.
Yeah.
And then my ex dies.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks later.
Wild. It was a wild time.
And then my nervous system snapped in half and I became disabled.
I was there for this ride. I was there for the ride.
You were there.
And it was a wild one.
It was. But I mean, look how much I transformed.
Oh my gosh, you're a totally different person.
Totally, completely different human being. And this person that I am now would never put up with that.
No.
I mean, my husband, you know my husband.
Yeah.
My husband is golden.
He is.
He is.
I've
the
seen it.
most loving, kind, mature, responsible human.
There for you, has your back, all the
Oh
things.
gosh, he's a ride or freaking die.
We're both blessed.
I mean, your husband's the same.
Yes.
We've got ride or dies.
But I think it's because, we did have to, not to like toot our own horns, but we're going to toot our own. Toot. I think it was because we had been through so much trauma, and then we had to spend so much time healing and finding our attachment security, so that because like attracts like.
For sure.
And people want to get on this issue. This brings me to the topic of compatibility, like what compatibility really means. But what compatibility really means is finding yourself.
Yeah, it really is. Because secure attracts secure every single time. That's why the people that are secure from childhood good for them.
Few and
It
far
wasn't
between.
me. But people that are secure, and they find somebody in their early 20s and they stay married, it's because they found somebody else secure. It's like those are the high school loves that they're like still going really strong, and you look on social media and you're like, oh, they're still in
Wow.
love. Like, that's so amazing. And they met when they were 17.
Yeah.
It's like, well, because they were secure and they knew how to work through their relationship issues, right? Insecure people, sorry, we end up divorced. We do, because we attracted and were attracted to other insecure people. And then we were,
And
can I say the S word?
Yeah.
Crap shows.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was dumpster fires, right? And so, but then people they just think, oh, I was just with the wrong person, right? So many people make that mistake, thinking I was
Yeah.
just with the wrong person, and if I have a new partner, it's all going to be better.
They fail to self-reflect.
Yes.
That's what this is all about.
They feel so justified in their dumpster fire behavior because it was their partner's fault, right? But really, the question you have to ask yourself, which is step one, day one, is what was it about me that was attracted to this person, that stayed with this person, that put up with this behavior? And step number two is then to say, where was I at fault, right?
Radical responsibility.
Radical
I always
personal
loved
responsibility.
saying that in my coaching sessions.
Radical.
And really focusing on the word radical. Like, you have to get really, really intense.
Right. Like, there is absolutely no room for saying, well, I did B because my partner did A.
Right.
And even though B was a terrible behavior, it was super insecure, immature, or hurtful, I only did it because my partner did this thing that is worse.
Right.
It's like, no, we don't get to play that game anymore.
Right.
You are 100% responsible for your behavior at all times, regardless of what your partner does. If your partner's acting a fool, then you need to be setting boundaries and getting the heck out of there, right? You don't need to be justifying your bad behavior because they did something bad.
Well, and again, like, going back to when I was coaching, that was the one thing that I would always stress. I'm like, the thing is about once you reach secure attachment, then you could take good inventory.
Yes.
That's the only
For
time
sure.
you're able to really take that inventory of, okay, I've done everything I can. So now I can actually sit back and say, okay, I've done everything I can. I feel secure. I've set my boundaries. I've not become reactive within conflict, and it still doesn't work. So I can walk away with my pride.
Right. And it is so much better to walk away with no regrets than it is to walk away and be plagued by, man,
Wondering.
I didn't show up well. And because that leads people to return.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And because when they finally come to that realization and then they try to return and then the other partner hasn't done any work and then it's just they've wasted more of their time. Right. So getting to the point where you are truly attachment secure, you get to the point where you can walk away from bad behavior.
Yeah.
Because before I met my husband, he's probably not going to listen to this, but before I met him, I did date a few people when I first started dating. Just, there was a couple other dudes and there was one with a red flag. And I was like, bye, bye.
Yep.
Like, I didn't even go on a second date.
Yep.
I just was like, nope. I mean, he was good looking and he was extremely successful. And
yeah, it didn't take me as long to see the red flags after
after
my ex, my main ex,
Yeah.
And I dated a few men as well, and it was just like,
you were so good about turning the red flags down. I wanted to be like you. I was like, she can just be like, no, bye.
Yeah, see the proof of modeled behavior.
Yeah,
right here.
Exactly. You became secure before I became secure. You did, and but you were a lot of the reason that I went down that road, because I was like, I know all this stuff. I know what my problems are.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to fix it. Nobody ever talks about how to fix it.
Never.
Ever.
Just the understanding of it.
Yeah.
Or here's a book, or
yeah. I mean, understanding is the first step. It shouldn't be the end result. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of therapy gave me. I mean, I loved my therapist. She was amazing. And I don't think I probably would have made it through some of the difficulty without her. But I got understanding. I didn't get tools.
Right.
Right. And what I had to do is I had to search high and low for the tools, and I had to experiment with them and figure out what worked. And,
And you spent a lot of time alone.
I did.
A lot of
I was
time.
dedicated to healing. I was, for a whole year, I said, I will not date anybody. And that was huge for me as
Yeah.
as a
And
more anxious. I was a fearful of women who leaned anxious, but to be alone was to be abandoned to me. And so that was the hardest thing I ever
yeah.
did, but
And
it
you
was
really
so worth
committed to
it.
that.
I
You
did.
really
I
committed to that.
did.
Even like within your
100%.
friendships,
I
like you
did.
kind of just disappeared for a year.
I did. I
Mhm.
did. And because I needed God.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really, as we wrap up, like that's the thing that people need to understand is that the other side is only scary temporarily.
It is only scary
It's only
temporarily.
temporary. And
Right.
then once you get to that place where, I mean, we're all still in on a healing journey for
Of
the rest of our
course.
lives,
For
but
sure. I 100%
once you
agree.
get to that other side of divorce and really being able to feel good about you again,
Hmm.
it's really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, in my situation, the grass was 100% greener on the other side.
Yeah.
And what I try to tell people, and this is really hard for me to share,
Mhm.
but I'm going to share it. I didn't divorce my ex because I was afraid he would drink himself to death. And he did
Mhm.
when I left.
Yeah.
And I had so much guilt and so much shame that I
Mhm.
should have stayed.
Mm.
That was part of the whole downfall and the rock bottom for
Yeah.
me. But, God released me from that and he showed me that it wasn't I couldn't stop him from being an alcoholic.
Right.
I could not stop that.
Mhm.
I had no control over that.
Mhm.
But I also couldn't be a shell of a human being
Mm.
anymore in that inside of the relationship. And so even knowing what happened, do I regret leaving? The answer is no,
Mhm. Mhm.
because my kids needed at least one healthy parent.
Mhm.
And I never would have met my second husband, who, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so precious.
Yeah, and it's precious to your children.
It's precious to my children. I mean, just on the way here,
Mhm.
my daughter called and was like, I have a stomach ache. I think I want to come home. I need to come home.
Yeah.
I call my husband, like, I'm going to turn around. We're not
Yeah,
going to be
we
able
were
to
about
record the podcast today. And he's like, nope, I got it, babe. I
Yeah,
got it. I got her. I
immediately.
immediately didn't even think. He
And
didn't
I
even
was like,
hesitate. He's like, I'll drop what I'm doing. I got her. And
mhm.
I'll keep you updated. I'll assess her. If she needs to go to the doctor, I'll get her there.
Mm.
Like, just go record the podcast. I'll keep you updated. If you're really
Super
needed.
Donald.
Super Donald. I love you.
Yeah.
But that's what it should be.
Yeah.
That's what it should be.
Mhm.
If you are not happy at least 80% of the time in your marriage and you've tried interventions and you've
Mhm.
set boundaries and you're getting no movement, freaking leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just divorce, it can all be navigated. The
Yeah.
finances will be navigated. There's supports out there. There's help out there.
Mhm.
There's a million and one resources out there to help you navigate divorce. And the
And
grass will be freaking greener on the other side if you do the work.
right. And again, I want to be clear. Like, we don't advocate for divorce.
No, I
ever.
try to save a marriage at all costs.
Yeah, and I mean, we're both women of faith, and so we
sure.
definitely don't advocate for divorce. And we know that God loves marriage, but God loves marriage on the terms where it's a true partnership.
It's a covenant.
Right?
And that's why he gives. And what people don't understand is the biblical side of it even says, like, neglect is abuse,
Mhm.
abuse is abuse, and that's all under abandonment,
Mhm.
right? Of the covenant,
Right.
and as is infidelity. So if you have, if you have severe neglect, if you have an abuse, or if you have infidelity, you're released. You
Yeah.
need to go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, no, I do try to save a marriage.
I know.
I mean, we try everything first.
Mhm.
I'm never ever tell people to jump straight to divorce unless there's serious abuse
And
they're
guess
in
what,
harm's
guys?
way.
She has saved marriages.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean that's
Her reviews say so.
the greatest joy is knowing that, oh my gosh, like somebody's childhood is forever preserved in a
Mhm.
positive way because their parents worked it out.
Right.
I want nothing more than that, and
Mhm.
God has put me on this earth to try to achieve that.
100%.
But you can't play with other people's demons either.
Right.
If they refuse to let their demons go,
Mhm.
you can't play with them,
Mhm.
to where it breaks you down
Yeah.
and you can't recover from it.
Yeah.
I mean, the damage of abuse and severe neglect it's incomprehensible what it does to the nervous system.
Yeah. And God doesn't want that.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. So, well, I think that's a beautiful place to stop.
I think so too.
Yeah. Well, if you loved this podcast today, please go share and subscribe on iTunes. And of course, go follow Dr. Hensley on social media at The Dating Decoder. And if you are interested in any of her coaching services, you can visit her website at thedatingdecoder.com.
Yes, I would love to help you.
Yes. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.
Love, light, and perspective.